What I've said so far are things that could help with your intuition in general. So I want to talk about how you can read a tarot card or how to read tarot cards intuitively. So I think when it comes to reading tarot cards intuitively, and I would say the first thing is to consider the traditional and the general definition of the card. So that could be a really good context for your reading, because I feel like I think you can just vibe with the pictures, but I also believe that, you know, you kind of need a proper context for everything. It's like, if you just read pictures, then I think some moments you might do that. I just feel like, there's like, tarot is such a system, right? It's kind of like, it really gives you a lot of ground to work with. So I feel like it's good to always try to contextualize a little bit and then just build your intuition off it. And because I feel like the cards, that particular card showed up for a reason. So I feel like you need to honor the definition first and then just see what comes up, you know, intuitively. So when you're engaging with tarot cards intuitively, the most important thing is to, I think, number one, despite the fact that I just said that you need to contextualize a bit, I think you just need to switch gears too. Once you sort of left-brained it, once you sort of looked at it with your left brain, you have to switch to your right brain, which is where your intuition is, I think. So you're switching off the analytical and highly logical aspect of your brain and you're trying to go into the realm of imagination. So imagination is a good way to approach a tarot card when you're trying to read intuitively, because you're trying to vibe with it. You're trying to capture, you're trying to like perceive or get the what is the vibe that's coming out, or what in that very moment, because depending on who you're reading for, the question you're reading for, so different things can come up. You can do 100 readings and use one card, and each time you might get a different interpretation because of what your intuition is saying to you. So using your imagination, I think a good way to look at it, to engage with the card, is to address it, sort of frame it with your, approach it with your five senses. So for example, if you look at the Two of Pentacles, and usually it's like an infinity sign, there's like two coins sort of rotating, and then a man is sort of doing this balancing act, right? So depending on the question and circumstance, you could have multitude of just different interpretations. And if you listen to your intuition, so imagine what you are looking at this picture. Okay, so it's looking at this picture is almost like path working. It's almost like path working, but not. You're like not going into the picture, but you're just looking at the window that shows you the picture. So you're just kind of getting a snapshot in a way, because pathworking is a totally different exercise. And if you're interested in pathworking, I know Jessie Undenberg has shared lots of great videos about this, so check out her channel. But yeah, so use your imagination and then think about what you can experience with your five senses with this picture. So not like the five senses, like not necessarily, they're not gonna all like bombard you with sensory details all the time. Often I find it's usually there's might be like visual or it'll just be audio, stuff like that. So going back to the Two of Pentacles example, so if you look at sight, so that would be the first thing, right? Because it's a visual representation of a symbolic like archetype. You look at this picture and you would look at it and imagine how this picture would be moving. So for example, maybe in your mind when you're looking at Two of Pentacles, the man sort of drops the pentacle by accident and you're just like, just your imagination. But I think it's really cool if you go with that feeling, because dropping could mean losing balance, needing more skills to accomplish that task of balancing something, or needing to relax because you're too strained, because you've been doing this balancing act for too long. So once you have this sort of image, you can kind of check in with how you feel. You're like, is this man looking really tired? So I kind of try to tell a story about what's happening in the picture. I'm trying to tell a story. It's kind of like use imagination and just do some storytelling. So this man looks like he's trying to do some balancing act, and then one of the pentacles fall and then just dropped to the ground, and seems like he's really exhausted and it seems he can't go on. So you can kind of go from there, and then you can check in with your other five senses. Like, what do you hear? You might hear the coin dropping. It might be this really loud, paralyzing, just bam, on the floor, which is kind of like a moment, which can give you the message of like, could be breaking this balance or breaking this act will bring you like a great sense of shock. This is something that you don't want to happen because maybe you're afraid of it. So that's the kind of messages that could come through. And then you can check in with another sense. You could check in with your smell. So I feel like this is, for me, like I'm not really, like this area is just like non-existent. Might be because I have a small nose, I don't know. A tiny Asian nose. I usually don't smell things or just in my imagination. So, but you can check in like what you smell. Like you could be smelling sweat because this man has just been so tired and nervous. It's just cold sweat everywhere. And then speaking of cold sweat, you could check in with your sensory, like the sense of touch. So does it feel like really heavy? Do the pentacles feel really heavy? Do they feel cold? Do they feel hot? Like what does that mean symbolically, you know? And what was the other sense? Taste. Or do you taste anything? And I don't get a lot of sensory things from here either. It's not really my main sensory channel. I usually get visuals and sounds and sometimes just like an overall vibe and overall gut feeling. So yeah, using the five senses or kind of just using that as a framework to really look at a card, to really feel into the card can give you a lot of intuitive insights as to what this picture is trying to tell you at that very moment. And I kind of just want to say that I think maybe a lot of people would expect that you would have this really grand imaginative not like an imaginative moment, but just like a really dramatic magical moment of like actually seeing the pictures move. And I feel like that's very, it's like very Hollywood. I think a lot of us who are working with energy or we're working with tarot, it's like we always expect something grand to happen. I think this is just like a product of just watching recent films with really good visual and computer CGI and visual effects. So we can expect our magical experiences to be like that too, to be highly visceral. But I find that for me personally at least, often it's not blurry and it's not vague, although it could feel that way. It's more like a feeling. It's more like a fuzziness that you can feel into. It's more like a space that you enter. So it's not like a movie, just like screenplay, it's just like right in front of you. So it's usually more subtle. Like I think that's the word, subtle. It's usually like those kinds of experiences are really subtle. Sometimes you see things in your mind's eye. I think like a lot of people would expect that like you would actually see something like almost like a projection from a projector, just like right in front of you when you see something or when you're like clairvoyant. But I feel like a lot of it's like an overlapping sort of image in your head, in your eye, and then kind of just like in the realm of your imagination. If you see in your imagination, that might just be like, I feel like that's just what you're experiencing. So just putting it out there, if you don't see like, you know, it becomes like a 3D hologram, like don't be disappointed. I don't think it happens very often. I don't think like it doesn't really happen to most of us. I don't think. But just for me, like I feel like most of us, I feel it's just like it's more like a feeling. So don't be disappointed if it's not as visceral as you wanted when you're trying to imagine things or when you're trying to see into a card. It's just really listen to that. Just fall back into that layer of subtlety and just kind of sit there and then just pay attention to what comes up. So 5 senses, 5 sensory details, 5 senses. So great framework for reading a card intuitively. Okay, so another way to look at a card intuitively is to summon your inner child archetype. Because often as adults, it's sort of like when we're adulting, it's our tendency to overanalyze things from an overly logical perspective, because you often in adulthood, we have to be practical with things and, you know, we got responsibilities and whatnot. But when you're doing a tarot reading, I feel like you need that sense of play. Yeah, like not as in like or not as in like you're not taking your reading seriously, but I think you need that sense of play, that sense of openness that a child has, that sort of attitude of like very like being very accepting and open and just kind of like the full archetype, you know, just being very open, like the sun and the full archetype, you know, summon your inner child archetype when you are doing a tarot reading, because I feel that's really going to bring depth to your tarot reading. Because sometimes sometimes when people talk about like I don't have kids yet. I mean, I have a cat, but he's like my baby, but I don't have human children yet. And sometimes I hear about stories about how like tarot moms or tarot dads, they show their kids, like they give their kids a tarot deck, or they kind of stumble across a tarot deck and then they would start giving off this amazing interpretation just straight from the source or something. So I feel like an inner child like really helps you open up that channel of your like channeling at that channel of your intuition, because a child sees the world kind of just with a fresh pair of eyes. You know, they don't have any preconceived ideas, or they don't have any judgment. They don't have a lot of baggage when it comes to reading something, when it comes to experiencing. So I think working with your inner child archetype and summoning your inner child archetype is a good way to open up the channels of your intuition, because when you're open, it shows that you're listening. It shows that you're willing to listen. So inner child archetype is a good way to. It's a good archetype to summon when reading tarot cards. And I think it's just a good archetype to work with anyway in life. You should never let your inner child die, and you should never let your inner child be unnecessarily silenced, because I've done that before and that sucked. So just so you know, inner child archetype is awesome. Okay, so another way to engage with the tarot card intuitively, so I kind of mentioned this before when I talked about the five senses, is to engage in storytelling. So you don't have to necessarily check in with the five senses. You know, you can use a different framework. You can just look at a card and go, once upon a time, this man looks like he's going somewhere, and then he looks like he wants this, and he looks like he's kind of describe what he's doing. So in a way, you're also engaging with, you're trying to interpret the picture. You're trying to make this picture move. Imagine this picture is a frame in the movie, and you're trying to, as soon as you tune in, you know, the movie begins, and then you just have to let it roll. You just have to let the picture move on its own and just follow that picture just as if you're watching a movie. It's like you can't really jump into the movie and change it, but you're just gonna watch it unfold and then just kind of have your own interpretation. So do storytelling on do Once Upon a Time if you're stuck. That's always a good starter. You know, just go Once Upon a Time. It's I feel like that's the archetypal like grand opening of all stories. Even if you're stuck, and even if you've never done this before, once you say Once Upon a Time, your brain just clicks. Like, this is what I tell my students when we're doing creative writing or narrative essays. When they're stuck, they're just like, I don't know how to begin. I'm just like, start with Once Upon a Time, and then it's cheesy, but might not fit with the genre that you're writing. But after you get it going, you can always go back and fix your opening, right? But Once Upon a Time always just does the trick. So start with Once Upon a Time, and then just tell the story of the card and see what's happening. Like, what's happening in the card? Like, are the characters having conversations? Are they having a conversation with themselves, with spirit, with an animal, with like another figure on the card? Like, what are they doing? Is there music playing? Like, how did it feel? What's the atmosphere? What's the mood? You know, pull all your literary terms from fictional studies back in high school. Like, what's the setting? What else? Like, what's you know, what's going on in that picture, right? So once you start telling the story, you can be like, okay, what does this story mean in this particular circumstance? And a good way, actually two ways to practice storytelling is, one way is to just get a random picture and just get a picture prompt and then tell a story based on a picture. So I feel like when we're reading a tarot card, sometimes we get pressure to kind of like, we feel the need to channel something insightful and wise. It's like, come on, it's kind of like we gotta say something based on this card or based on this reading. It's like we have the expectation of like we need to get something out of a reading, because that's why we're doing a reading, right? Like that's why we're doing it, because we want to get some kind of insight that will help us or help others. But that also kind of puts us in a framework where we have to come up with something. And I feel like when we're too goal oriented, the process just becomes too linear. It's like, okay, stare at the picture, come up with insight, and then awesome. So it kind of becomes like a really dead process. So I feel like practicing with just a random picture or a photograph, you know, just go into Google Image and then just practice with it, just reading a picture and just telling a fun story about a picture, or do some creative writing, use it as a prompt, you know. I think that helps you work with your intuition and your imagination. It helps activate your imagination, because when you're reading a picture, it's not really a reading, right? So no pressure. So you can just use that to practice, and then once you feel comfortable, once you kind of find like a mode of doing it, find a way that you kind of enjoy doing it, you can just apply that to your own tarot practice and use your imagination and activate your storytelling muscles that way. And another way to kind of practice storytelling is to do it in reverse, is to kind of take the movies you like to watch, some of your favorite stories, fairy tales or comic books, graphic novels, television show. So For example, if you like the movie of Harry Potter, and then take the story of Harry Potter, and then assign cards to represent the different scenes in that movie, represent the different characters in that movie, or represent the different moments in that movie. So for example, trying not to spoil Harry Potter for those of you who have not read it, but for example, when Ron is doing that wizard chest, you know, he's doing the chest with all the giant wizard chest statues, that would be a Knight of Swords moment, I would say, because he's embodying the spirit of Knight of Swords, because he really has to strategize, he has to act really fast and think really fast, and he also holds on to his ideals that I believe in friendship. I'm gonna stay here and let Harry go on. Wait, is that what he did? Something like that. Yeah, he stayed there, I think. Sorry, it's been a while since I read the first book, but you know what I mean, right? Kind of like just picking, selecting cards that would match a particular moment, that would match a particular sentiment in the movie, or match the theme of the movie, or the story or you're working with, or match the characters of the movie. So that's a good way to practice. It's like a really neat exercise, because when you're doing it in reverse, it will give you like more insight to read between the lines too. So it's all like, you know, it's all like interrelated, and it's all like interconnected. So doing in reverse helps too. Yeah, so it doesn't even have to be like a movie or a story. It could just be like what's happening in your own life. You can just cautiously select cards that you feel like represent what you're going through right now. And then you can maybe do a draw and compare the cards that come up or something like that. So doing it in reverse definitely helps. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find this video helpful, insightful, and then if you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. If there's any other tarot related videos you would like me to take on, or maybe interested in seeing or learning from me, leave a comment below too. I would love to hear what you want me to make. Yeah, not a very smooth ending, but hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, be a hero on story and keep calm and tarot on and level up life. Peace out.